Let me ask you something. Think back to the darkest, most miserable version of yourself you've ever been. Maybe it was a holiday season where nothing went right. Maybe it was a year where life just beat you down. Maybe you sat across from a table full of people who were laughing and celebrating, and you felt completely invisible. Completely alone. Like the whole world was in on some joke that nobody ever explained to you. Now imagine feeling that way every single day of your life. And now imagine that the one time a year when the entire world tells you to be happy, to smile, to sing, to celebrate, is actually the cruelest reminder of everything you've never had. That's not a villain's origin story. That's a wound. And in the year 2000, Jim Carrey put on a suit made of green fur, sat in a makeup chair for 8.5 hours every single day, and brought to life one of the most complicated, heartbreaking, and, yes, hilarious characters in the history of American holiday cinema. I'm talking about the Grinch. Now, most of you know the name. You've seen the cartoon. You've read the Dr. Seuss book. You think you know what this movie is. A grumpy green guy who steals Christmas, gets a big heart, gives it all back. Lesson learned. Roll credits. Done. But here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. The 2000 live-action version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, directed by Ron Howard, is not just a holiday movie. It's not just a kids' film. It is a psychologically rich, visually stunning, emotionally layered portrait of social rejection, childhood trauma, the toxicity of performative holiday culture, and the question of whether a person who has been broken by the world can ever truly be put back together. And yes, there are also some really funny jokes about reindeer. So whether you grew up watching this movie on VHS and you've got nostalgia running through your veins right now, or you've never seen it and you want to understand what all the fuss is about, sit back, because we are going deep into Whoville today. This is going to be a long one. And I promise you, it is worth every minute. Let's get into it. Section 2, Movie Overview, the film, the context, the expectations. Before we crack open the story, let's set the scene, because context matters a lot. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, officially titled that, though most people just call it The Grinch, was released on November 17, 2000, by Universal Pictures. It was directed by Ron Howard, who at that point in his career was known primarily for dramatic, prestige-level work. We're talking Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind was coming next, Backdraft. This was a guy who made serious movies for serious adults. So when he signed on to direct a live-action adaptation of a Dr. Seuss children's book, people raised eyebrows. Both eyebrows. Some people raised 3. The screenplay was written by Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman, who had the extraordinarily difficult task of taking a story that runs about 64 illustrated pages, a 26-minute animated special, and stretching it into a feature-length theatrical film without losing the spirit of Dr. Seuss. That is not an easy job. That is an impossible job. And yet, they pulled it off in ways nobody expected. The cast? Let's talk about the cast, because this is where the movie makes or breaks itself. Jim Carrey as the Grinch. Now, in the year 2000, Jim Carrey was at the absolute apex of his cultural powers. The Truman Show in '98 had shown the world he could do serious, emotionally complex work. Man on the Moon in '99 had proved he was willing to completely disappear into a role. He was not just a comedic performer at this point, he was a legitimate actor. And the studio knew that if anyone could carry an entire movie while buried under pounds of foam latex and green yak hair, it was Jim Carrey. But here's what people forget, Jim Carrey almost didn't take the role. He was initially hesitant because of how physically demanding and psychologically taxing the makeup process would be. The prosthetics team, led by the legendary Rick Baker, who had previously worked on An American Werewolf in London and Men in Black, created a full face and full body suit that took 8.5 hours to apply every single day. Let that sink in. 8.5 hours. In a chair. Before the cameras even started rolling. To cope with the psychological stress of being encased in foam and hair for that long, the production famously brought in a Navy SEAL trainer to teach Carey psychological endurance techniques. The same methods used to help soldiers survive isolation and discomfort. That's how serious this was. This wasn't just makeup. This was method acting at the molecular level. The supporting cast is equally impressive. Taylor Momsen, yes, the future lead singer of the Pretty Reckless, plays Cindy Lou Who, a 6-year-old girl whose curiosity and empathy set the entire plot in motion. This was Taylor Momsen's film debut, and she is absolutely magnetic in it. Jeffrey Tambor plays the pompous, self-important Mayor Augustus May Who, the film's real antagonist. Christine Baranski plays Martha May Whovier, the Grinch's former crush and the mayor's current love interest, a role that carries far more emotional weight than you'd expect. Bill Irwin and Molly Shannon play Cindy's parents, Lou and Betty Lou Who, with warmth and heart. And the legendary Anthony Hopkins provides the narration, and his voice alone is enough to make you feel like you're hearing a fairy tale being whispered by God himself. Culturally, the timing of this film was fascinating. Christmas movies in 2000 were fine. Home Alone had set a kind of standard. But nobody had really done a large-scale, visually ambitious, emotionally complex holiday film in quite this way. This was Universal Pictures swinging for the fences with a $123 million budget, a massive number for the time, especially for a family film. And audiences responded. How The Grinch Stole Christmas opened to $55 million in its opening weekend, one of the biggest November openings in history at that point. It went on to gross over $345 million domestically and $260 million internationally, for a worldwide total of over $600 million on a $123 million budget. In the year 2000. That is a staggering number. Critics, however, were more complicated in their response. And we'll get to that later. Because the critical conversation around this film is genuinely interesting. But first, the story. Let's walk through this movie beat by beat, scene by scene, and I mean all of it. Section 3, the full story breakdown, scene by scene. The world of Whoville. The film opens with the Anthony Hopkins narration, and if you've never heard a man with that particular voice say the word Whoville, you're welcome in advance for what's about to happen to your soul. Hopkins's narration sets the stage with a tone that is both whimsical and somehow weighty. We're told about a snowflake that drifts down through the sky and lands inside a tiny world, Whoville, a community that exists, in this film's visual mythology, inside a snowflake, nestled in a mountain range. It's a gorgeous piece of production design. The Who community is built at the base of Mount Crumpet, which looms above them like a dark, craggy finger pointing at the sky. And then we see Whoville. Oh, Whoville. Production designer Michael Kornblith and his team built one of the most intricate, detailed, physically constructed sets in Hollywood history. They built Whoville on the Universal backlot, a real, physical, three-dimensional town. The buildings are curved and organic, like they grew out of the ground rather than being built. The color palette is a controlled riot of deep reds, forest greens, amber yellows, and dusty pinks. There is snow everywhere, but it's warm snow, if that makes any sense. The whole place feels alive. And the Who's themselves. The makeup design for the citizens of Whoville is extraordinary, upturned noses, exaggerated features, wild hair, but none of it crossing into uncanny territory. They feel like people. Quirky, weird, wonderful people, but people. We're introduced to Whoville during the Christmas season, and the town is absolutely electric with holiday energy. Decorations everywhere. Caroling in the streets. Children laughing. It is the most concentrated, maximalist expression of Christmas joy you've ever seen committed to film. But here's what the movie does really cleverly in these opening moments. It lets you see the excess. The obsession. The almost competitive nature of the Who's Christmas enthusiasm. Even before the Grinch shows up, there's a subtle undercurrent of this might be a little much. The decorations are aggressively over the top. The mayor is already polishing his image. The Who's aren't just celebrating Christmas, they're performing it. And the distinction is going to matter enormously as the story unfolds. Introducing Cindy Lou Who. Our entry point into this story is Cindy Lou Who, played by 6-year-old Taylor Momsen, and she is, I want to be very clear about this, the actual hero of this film. The Grinch gets all the attention, all the comedy, all the mythology. But Cindy Lou Who is the moral backbone. She's the one asking the question that drives the entire movie. Is this what Christmas is really about? We meet Cindy at the Whoville post office, helping her father sort the avalanche of Christmas mail. And even here, in this perfectly normal, perfectly cheerful scene, we can see that Cindy is different from the other Whos. She's quieter, more thoughtful. She asks questions rather than just accepting things. And she notices things that other people don't. What she notices, specifically, is the name written on package after package that nobody ever sends anything to. A name that apparently nobody in Whoville talks about. A name that seems to make adults uncomfortable when she mentions it. The Grinch. Cindy wants to know who the Grinch is. Why does everyone seem to hate him? Why does he live alone on a mountain? And most importantly, shouldn't he be invited to celebrate Christmas with everyone else? The adults, of course, brush her off. The Grinch is just the Grinch. He's the monster on the mountain. He's not one of them. End of conversation. But Cindy Lou Who, bless her little heart, does not accept that answer. And that refusal to accept the easy, comfortable, dismissive answer, that is the engine of this entire story. The Grinch's domain, Mount Crumpet. And then we go up the mountain. This transition, from the warm, colorful, bustling streets of Whoville to the dark, jagged, windswept wastes of Mount Crumpet, is one of the most visually effective tonal shifts in the movie. It happens in a single cut, and it tells you everything you need to know about the relationship between the Grinch and Whoville without a single word of dialogue. Down there, warmth, color, community, noise. Up here, cold, grey, silence, isolation. The Grinch's cave/lair on Mount Crumpet is a masterpiece of production design. It is simultaneously depressing and hilarious, a garbage palace, really, filled with junk and inventions and discarded Who paraphernalia. But there's also something oddly cozy about it, in the way that a very cluttered, very lived-in space can feel like an extension of someone's personality. This is the Grinch's home. Not just his lair. His home. And it reflects him perfectly, chaotic, brilliant, angry, and secretly deeply sensitive. And there he is. The Grinch. Jim Carrey's physical performance in this role is something that deserves its own documentary. He is completely unrecognizable under the makeup, and yet he is completely himself. Every mannerism, every glance, every coil of his body communicates this character's inner life with extraordinary precision. He moves like a cat who hates everyone in the room but is also secretly hoping someone will pet him. The Grinch's first scenes establish him with comic perfection. We see his morning routine, a grotesque parody of domestic normalcy. His alarm clock is elaborate and ridiculous and involves multiple steps and a small explosion. He brushes his teeth aggressively. He talks to himself in the mirror. He checks his schedule, 6:30, dinner with me, 7 o'clock, stare into the abyss, 8 o'clock, wrestle with my self-loathing. It's a darkly funny bit that also tells you something real. This creature has thought about his loneliness. He has scheduled his misery. He is aware of it. And he has found a way to make it part of his routine, because routine is what keeps you from falling apart. His only companion is his dog, Max, an adorable, long-suffering mutt who clearly adores the Grinch despite all evidence suggesting that adoration is not warranted or reciprocated. Max is one of the great unsung comic treasures of this film. Every scene he's in, he's doing something subtly heartbreaking or funny or both simultaneously. The Grinch treats Max with gruff affection, the kind of love that doesn't know how to express itself properly. And Max takes it all with infinite, patient devotion. The Grinch, in these early scenes, is furious about Christmas. He can hear the celebrations from down in Whoville, and it drives him absolutely mad. He rants. He schemes. He makes faces at the sound of caroling that could strip paint off a wall. And it's funny, it's genuinely funny. But there's also an edge to it. A rawness. You can tell that this isn't just grumpiness. This is something that hurts. Cindy's decision, she's going to invite the Grinch. Back in Whoville, Cindy Lou Who has made up her mind. She's going to find the Grinch. She's going to invite him to the Whoville Christmas celebration, specifically, to be named the holiday cheermaster, an annual honor the mayor is bestowing on himself. Cindy believes that if the Grinch could just be included, just be seen, maybe things could be different. The adults in Whoville react to this idea the way adults always react to genuinely radical empathy, with confusion, discomfort, and a reflexive desire to say no. The mayor is particularly opposed because the mayor, and this is important, the mayor knows something about the Grinch's history in Whoville. Something he'd rather not have brought up. Something that is, in a very real sense, his fault. But Cindy persists. She makes the trek up Mount Crumpet herself, a brave, terrifying, dangerous thing for a small child to do, and she finds the Grinch. And in their first interaction, we see something extraordinary happen. The Grinch doesn't know what to do with genuine kindness. He's hostile. He's defensive. He tests her. He tries to scare her. And Cindy Lou Who just looks at him. With big, clear eyes. No fear. No judgment. Just honest curiosity and warmth. And for just a moment, you can see the Grinch waver. You can see something behind those yellow eyes that isn't anger. Something softer. Something scared. Then he pulls it back. Slams the door. The armor goes back up. But the damage is done. Cindy has gotten through, just barely. And that crack in the wall is going to matter. The Christmas cheermaster ceremony, the humiliation begins. Cindy manages to convince the mayor to invite the Grinch to Whoville for the cheermaster ceremony. And this is where the film takes a genuinely dark turn, because what should be a moment of inclusion and healing becomes, through the mayor's vanity and the town's collective cowardice, another act of humiliation. But first, the Grinch comes down from the mountain. And this sequence is one of the greatest Jim Carrey physical comedy performances ever captured on film. The Grinch getting dressed up for the occasion. The Grinch actually trying, to be pleasant and social. Making conversation. Complimenting things. Attempting a smile that lands somewhere between genuine effort and weaponized nightmare fuel. It's heartbreaking and hilarious in equal measure. And the way Carrey plays it, you can feel the effort it's costing this creature to try to be normal, to try to be accepted. It's genuinely moving. For a little while, it seems like it might work. The Grinch is actually having something that resembles a good time. He wins a Christmas cookie eating contest with terrifying efficiency. He receives the cheermaster crown. People are clapping. Cindy Lou is beaming. And then Augustus May Who has to open his mouth. The mayor, motivated by jealousy, by the fact that Martha May Whovier is paying attention to the Grinch rather than him, and by a deep-seated guilt about his own role in the Grinch's original exile, gives the Grinch a very specific Christmas gift. A razor. As a pointed, deliberate reference to the incident in the Grinch's past that got him thrown out of Whoville in the first place. It's a cruel move. A petty, deliberately cruel move. And it works. Because what happens next is a flashback, and it is the emotional epicenter of this entire film. The flashback, young Grinch, young love, and the original wound. Here's where the 2000 film distinguishes itself most dramatically from the original animated special and the original Seuss book. The filmmakers made a choice to give the Grinch a backstory, a detailed, specific, emotionally resonant origin story. And that choice is either the most brilliant or most controversial decision in the film, depending on who you ask. Young Grinch, played brilliantly by Josh Ryan Evans in what is genuinely heartbreaking work, was discovered as a baby in a basket on the doorstep of two elderly Who sisters, Clownella and Rose Who raised him with love. But from the very beginning, the Grinch was different. His green fur, his sharp eyes, his strange laugh, none of it fit the Who world. The other children made him feel like a freak. Except for one, young Martha May Whovier, who thought the Grinch was wonderful and strange and interesting. And young Grinch, in what is one of the most genuinely tender moments in the film, falls in love with her. He makes her a present, a Christmas angel made by hand, with real creative effort and affection. It's imperfect and a little chaotic and completely, utterly sincere. It is the most authentic expression of Christmas spirit in the entire movie. More authentic than any decoration in Whoville. But before he can give it to her, he notices that his face is covered with hair. He tries to shave. And something goes wrong. There's an accident. He shows up to the school Christmas party with cuts all over his face, looking like a disaster, and the children being what they sometimes are, laugh at him loudly cruelly including, in a moment of social cowardice that haunts the entire film, a young Augustus May Who, the same boy who will grow up to be the mayor, the same boy who just handed the adult Grinch that razor. Young Grinch, already on the edge, already feeling like he doesn't belong, snaps. He destroys the Christmas tree. He has a meltdown. And then, in the aftermath, he runs. He climbs Mount Crumpet and he never comes back. He has never had a Christmas present. He has never been truly included. He has never, not once, experienced the warmth of this holiday that he is expected to celebrate. And now, sitting in the middle of the cheermaster ceremony, holding a razor that is specifically designed to remind him of the worst moment of his life, he snaps again. The Grinch's rampage and rejection of Whoville. What follows is one of the great cinematic meltdowns in holiday film history. The Grinch, his brief, fragile attempt at connection shattered, goes full Grinch. He tears through the ceremony. He insults everyone. He tells the Whos exactly what he thinks of their Christmas obsession. He is angry and vicious and articulate, because this isn't just rage, it's articulate grievance. He's saying things that are, on some level, true. The Who's Christmas celebration is performative. It is about status and competition. The mayor does use the holiday for his own advancement. And then he announces his plan. He's going to steal Christmas. He's going to come back on Christmas Eve, take everything, every decoration, every gift, every bit of Christmas paraphernalia, and see how much the Whos love their holiday when they've got nothing left to celebrate with. He returns to the mountain. And now the movie shifts into its middle act, the scheming, plotting, building of the sleigh, the descent into pure grumpiness and self-reinforcing misery. But here's what I want you to notice, Cindy Lou Who is devastated. Not because the Grinch was mean. But because she knows, with the instinctive moral clarity that children sometimes have and adults lose, that the Grinch wasn't wrong about what he was saying. She knows that something went wrong here. Not with the Grinch. With Whoville. With the way her community treats people who don't fit. And she starts asking harder questions. The interrogation of Christmas, Cindy's crisis of faith. This is where the film does something genuinely unusual for a children's Christmas movie. It allows its child protagonist to have a crisis of faith about the holiday itself. Cindy Lou Who goes to see the Grinch's elderly guardian aunts, Clownella and Rose. She learns the truth about the young Grinch's history. She learns about the shaving incident, the Christmas party, the razor, the humiliation. She learns that the mayor, the man leading their Christmas celebration, was directly responsible for one of the cruelest moments in another person's life, and has never acknowledged it. And then Cindy does what few characters in holiday movies ever do, she sits with the discomfort. She doesn't immediately resolve it with a platitude. She thinks about it. She feels the weight of it. Her conversation with her father Lou in this section of the film is one of the most quietly beautiful exchanges in the whole movie. Lou Who, played with lovely understated warmth by Bill Irwin, doesn't have perfect answers. But he's present. He listens. And he says something that functions as the film's moral thesis. Christmas isn't in the things we buy or the lights we string. It's in the love we have for each other. It's not a revolutionary idea. But the film earns it, because it's been showing you the opposite for the past hour. The Grinch Steals Christmas, the Great Heist. Christmas Eve arrives. The Grinch builds his sleigh. He makes Max into a reindeer, with antlers secured by a comically oversized bolt. And he descends on Whoville in the dead of night. What follows is an extended sequence of comedic brilliance. The Grinch is methodical, gleeful, and tremendously efficient at stealing Christmas. He goes from house to house, taking everything. Trees. Ornaments. Stockings. Food. Wrapped presents. Every last bit of it. The sequence is shot with this wonderful blend of cinematic scope, the sleigh sweeping through the snowy streets, the Grinch's green silhouette against the moonlit sky, and intimate comedy, as we get close-up details of increasingly creative theft. There's a moment where the Grinch is about to leave Cindy Lou Who's house and she wakes up and catches him. And this scene, faithful in spirit to the original Seuss book and animated special, is handled with real tenderness. Carrey doesn't play it purely for laughs. There's a moment where the Grinch looks at this small child looking at him, and the mask slips, just slightly. He makes up a lie about fixing her tree. He pats her on the head, awkwardly, like someone who has never patted anyone on the head in their life, which he genuinely has an apostrophe T. He puts her back to bed. And then he finishes stealing everything and leaves. The Grinch loads every bit of stolen Christmas onto his massive sleigh and hauls it up to the peak of Mount Crumpet. He stands there, looking down at Whoville in the pre-dawn darkness, waiting. He is waiting for the Whos to wake up and scream. He is waiting for the sound of devastation. Because if they love Christmas as much as they say, and Christmas is just about stuff, then taking the stuff should break them. He cackles. He waits. He listens. The sound that breaks the Grinch. And then the sun comes up. And the Whos start to wake up. And what he hears is not screaming. It's singing. The Whos, all of them, every Who in Whoville, are standing together in the town square, hand in hand, in the cold morning air, with no decorations, no presents, no food, no lights, and they are singing together. Just singing. And this moment, this exact moment, is the one that the entire movie has been building toward. Because here's what it means: the Whos, stripped of everything external, everything performative, everything material about Christmas, still have each other. The thing they were actually celebrating was never the stuff. The stuff was just a symbol of it. But the love, the community, the connection, that doesn't disappear when you take away the ornaments. And the Grinch, who has spent his entire life believing that Christmas was just about stuff, because he was always excluded from the community, he was never let into the warmth, he was always outside looking in, realizes that he has fundamentally misunderstood the whole thing. He didn't steal Christmas. You can't steal Christmas. And his heart, that famous, much discussed heart, begins to grow. The scene in the film is played with extraordinary restraint by Carey for just a moment. He goes still. His face changes. Something real passes across it. And then the pain of it hits him, the grief of decades of isolation, the recognition of what he's missed, the terror of what he's about to feel, and it explodes out of him. His heart grows 3 sizes in the film's mythology. But what we are actually watching is a man, a creature, a person, experiencing a thaw. A lifetime of defensive numbness cracking open all at once. The sleigh, the fall, the choice. But here's the thing, the sleigh starts moving. The Grinch, overwhelmed by his feelings, doesn't notice immediately that the sleigh, loaded with every Christmas thing in Whoville, is beginning to slide. And when he does notice, he is faced with a choice. Let it fall. Let Christmas be gone. Or stop it. And there's a moment here, a real moment of decision. Not just physical action, but moral choice. The old Grinch, the wounded, defensive, armored Grinch, would have let it fall. Would have seen the sliding sleigh as the universe confirming his worldview. See? Nothing good lasts. Nothing warm stays warm. But the new Grinch, or rather, the real Grinch, the one underneath all that anger, grabs the sleigh. And holds it. With everything he has. The sequence that follows is one of the film's most visually spectacular moments. The Grinch, arms outstretched, entire body straining, hauling an impossible weight back from the edge of a cliff. And the emotional metaphor is not subtle, but it doesn't need to be. This is a man pulling his life back from the edge. This is a man choosing to hold on. He saves the sleigh. He stands on the peak of Mount Crumpet, heart hammering, tears on his furry green face, and he, for the first time in his life, makes the right choice. He brings Christmas back. The reunion, the confrontation, the healing. The Grinch brings the sleigh down to Whoville. And what follows is a careful, emotionally layered reunion sequence. The Who's reaction is initially complicated. Some of them are still afraid. Some of them don't know what to do. And the mayor, the Mayor Augustus May Who, seeing his rival returning in triumph, seeing Martha May moving toward the Grinch, makes one final desperate move to assert control. He tries to shame the Grinch again. He tries to re-establish the old dynamic. And what happens next is wonderful. Martha May Whovier, who has spent this entire movie being used as a prop in the mayor's ego, takes off the enormous diamond engagement ring the mayor has given her and hands it to the Grinch. Not as a romantic act, necessarily. As an act of witness. As an acknowledgement. As her saying, I always saw who you really were. I still see it. The mayor is exposed. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just exposed. The community sees him for what he is. And he deflates. And Cindy Lou who started this whole thing, walks up to the Grinch. And she says something simple and true and devastating. I'm glad you came. The Grinch cries. Big, ugly, cathartic sobs. Jim Carrey plays this with no vanity whatsoever. This is not attractive movie crying, this is real, messy, broken open weeping. And it is one of the most genuinely moving things in any holiday film I've ever seen. Because he has never, not once, been told that he was welcome. That his presence was good. That someone was glad he existed. And now he is. Christmas at the Grinch's cave, the perfect ending. The film ends with Christmas dinner at the Grinch's cave on Mount Crumpet. The whole Whoville community, or at least, the warm-hearted portion of it, climbs up the mountain and joins the Grinch in his home. His weird, chaotic, garbage palace home. And it becomes something extraordinary, a communal table, full of laughter and warmth, in the most unlikely place imaginable. The Grinch carves the roast beast, with perhaps slightly more violence than strictly necessary, but this is still the Grinch we're talking about, and he sits at the head of a table full of people who, for the first time, genuinely see him. The film's final image is the Grinch smiling. A real smile. Not the terrifying rictus grin of the early scenes, not the performance of pleasant, but a real, unguarded, startled by joy smile. And Anthony Hopkins wraps it all up with the narration from the original Seuss text, telling us that the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes that day, and that he carved the roast beast with the greatest of all ease. Roll credits. And honestly? Roll. Credits. Section 4, Character and Performance Analysis. Let's talk about the people in this story. Because this is where the film really earns its reputation. Jim Carrey as the Grinch. There are roles, and then there are performances. Jim Carrey's Grinch is the latter. This is a performance of such total physical, vocal, and emotional commitment that it transcends the material around it. Carrey doesn't just play the Grinch, he inhabits him. Every movement is specific. Every vocal choice is deliberate. The Grinch has a physical vocabulary that is entirely his own, the coiled readiness of his body, the way his head tilts when he's being sarcastically sweet, the full-body chaos of his laughter, the stillness of his face when genuine emotion cuts through. But what makes the performance transcendent is what Carrey does with the character's emotional life. There is a real person inside the Grinch. A frightened, wounded, brilliant, capable person who has spent his entire life building walls because the walls are the only thing that has ever protected him. And Carrey makes you feel every brick of those walls and every crack in them. The scene after the Cheermaster ceremony, when the Grinch returns to his cave, devastated, having tried and failed again, is a masterclass in conveying heartbreak through physical performance. He doesn't cry. He can't cry, not yet. Instead, his whole body deflates. His eyes go somewhere far away. And then he rebuilds the armor, piece by piece, until the sardonic, aggressive Grinch is back in place. That sequence takes maybe 45 seconds of screen time. And it tells you everything about this character's psychology. Jim Carrey endured genuine physical and psychological suffering to give us this performance, and every second of that suffering is visible on screen in the best possible way. Taylor Momsen as Cindy Lou Who. People underestimate Taylor Momsen in this role because she's a child and because the Grinch gets all the attention. But Cindy Lou Who is the moral and narrative engine of this film, and Momsen plays her with a quality that's rare in child performers, real emotional intelligence. She doesn't play the cute. She doesn't play the precocious. She plays the curious, the child who actually wants to understand, who takes things seriously, who isn't satisfied with easy answers. Her scenes with Jim Carrey have a genuine chemistry that could easily have gone wrong. Carrey is volcanic, Momsen is still. And that stillness, that clear-eyed, unafraid steadiness, is what makes their dynamic work. Cindy Lou Who is not afraid of the Grinch. And that fearlessness isn't because she doesn't understand the danger. It's because she sees something underneath it. Jeffrey Tambor as Mayor Augustus May Who. Jeffrey Tambor is given the film's most thankless task, playing the villain of a Christmas movie in which the ostensible villain is the hero. The mayor has to be genuinely awful, cruel, petty, self-serving, without being cartoonish. And Tambor, God bless him, nails it. The mayor is not evil in a dramatic way. He's evil in a real way, the way people in positions of social power are often small, insecure, and willing to hurt others to protect their status. He uses Christmas as a political tool. He uses Martha May as a trophy. He uses the community's affection for the holiday to insulate himself from accountability for his past cruelties. And the film doesn't give him a redemption arc. Which is, I'd argue, the right call. Not every person who does harm gets to be redeemed in the same story. Some people just are exposed and have to live with that. Christine Baranski as Martha May Whovier. Martha May Whovier is a more complex character than she initially appears. On the surface, she's a love interest and a plot device. But Baranski plays her with a quiet undercurrent of regret and guilt, the guilt of someone who knows they didn't stand up for someone they cared about, who let the crowd's cruelty sweep them along when they should have resisted. Her choice at the end of the film, giving the ring back, choosing to witness the Grinch's humanity, is her making up for a failure of courage that has lasted decades. It's a small moment. But Baranski makes it land. Section 5, Themes, Symbolism and Subtext. Now this is where we get into the real meat of the film. Because The Grinch, 2000, is operating on several different levels simultaneously, and most of them are more sophisticated than the film gets credit for. The critique of performative holiday culture. The film's most consistent and pointed theme is its critique of the way Western, particularly American, Christmas culture has become untethered from its emotional and spiritual roots and become primarily about performance and consumption. Whoville's Christmas obsession, as depicted in this film, is not innocent. It is compulsive. The Whos don't celebrate Christmas because of what it means. They celebrate it because it's what Whos do. It's their identity. It's their brand. The mayor decorates competitively. The Whos worry about the biggest tree and the most elaborate lights. There is an arms race of festive enthusiasm that has completely overshadowed any genuine reflection on what the holiday is supposed to be about. The film makes this explicit in ways that are surprisingly bold for a $123 million family Christmas movie. When Cindy Lou Who asks her father what Christmas is actually about, the honest answer, stripped of the shopping and decorating, is something most of the adults in Whoville have genuinely lost sight of. The Grinch, ironically, is the character who most clearly articulates this critique. When he rants at the cheermaster ceremony, he's not entirely wrong. He's wrong about the solution, theft, but he's not wrong about the diagnosis, commodification. And the film has the courage to acknowledge that. Social exclusion and the making of a monster. The film's second major theme is the social and psychological process by which communities create outcasts, and the damage that process does. Young Grinch was never given a chance. He was different, and his difference was never accommodated or celebrated. Instead, it was ridiculed. And the ridicule came not from evil people, necessarily, but from ordinary people engaging in ordinary thoughtlessness, the casual cruelty of children who haven't yet learned empathy, and the lingering cowardice of adults who never develop it. This is a genuinely radical idea for a family Christmas movie. The Grinch is not a monster who threatens Whoville. He is a person that Whoville made monstrous through exclusion and cruelty. The responsibility for his condition is not solely his own. It is shared by every who laughed, every adult who looked away, every mayor who handed a razor instead of an apology. Empathy is radical act. Cindy Lou Who's decision to seek out the Grinch is framed, throughout the film, as both childlike and radical. The adults around her consistently treat empathy toward the Grinch as naive at best, dangerous at worst. What child this small doesn't understand, they suggest, is that some people are just lost. Some people are just bad. Some people are just beyond help. But Cindy Lou Who's childlike insistence on looking for the person inside the monster is exactly right. And the film argues, through everything that follows, that this instinct, This refusal to write someone off is not naive. It is the most sophisticated and mature response to human complexity that exists. The snowflake as metaphor. The film's framing device, Whoville existing inside a snowflake, is more than just a whimsical visual conceit. A snowflake is unique. Each one is different. And each one melts when it comes into contact with heat, with warmth. The Grinch is the cold. He brings the cold. He is the cold. And the warmth that eventually melts his defenses is not dramatic or violent, it's the slow, patient accumulation of small human connections. A child's clear gaze. A grandmother's story. A community choosing to sing instead of scream. Cold things don't melt all at once. They thaw, gradually, as warmth surrounds them. And that's exactly what the film shows us. The Grinch as the Christmas spirit made manifest. Here's a reading of this film that I don't think gets enough attention. The Grinch, in a paradoxical way, is the true Christmas spirit. He's the one who actually thinks about what Christmas is supposed to mean. He's the one who strips away the commercial excess and forces the Whos to reckon with whether their love of the holiday is genuine or performative. He's the one who, through his theft, inadvertently gives Whoville the greatest Christmas gift it's ever received, the clarity to understand what actually matters. He doesn't intend this, of course not, but the best Christmas characters rarely intend their gifts. Section 6, Technical and Artistic Review. Direction, Ron Howard's bold gamble. Ron Howard directing this film was a genuinely unusual choice, and in retrospect, it was exactly the right one. Howard brings a filmmaker's instinct for emotional truth that keeps the film grounded even as the production design goes completely baroque. His most important directorial decision is to trust Jim Carrey completely. Howard gives Carrey room to improvise, to explore, to expand. Large portions of the Grinch's comedic material was Carrey's invention, done in the moment on set. Howard recognized when to keep the camera running and when to cut, and the result is a performance that feels spontaneous and alive even in its most structured moments. Howard also makes the bold choice to take the Grinch's emotional life seriously in a film that could easily have been entirely comic. The flashback sequence, the Grinch's moment of thaw at the peak of the mountain, these are shot with the same care and attention Howard brings to his dramatic work. He doesn't wink at the audience during these scenes. He plays them straight. And they land. Production design, Michael Kornblith's masterpiece. The production design of this film is, without exaggeration, one of the greatest achievements in Christmas movie visual history. Michael Kornblith built an entire world, a physical, three-dimensional, walk-around inside it world, that is simultaneously fantastical and emotionally real. Whoville is a place where every building, every street corner, every small detail rewards close attention. The architecture is Seuss-like but grounded. You could believe that people actually live here. The color work is extraordinary. The contrast between Whoville's warmth and Mount Crumpet's cold is maintained through the entire film in the color palette, the lighting, even the sound design. The Grinch's cave deserves particular mention. The production team filled it with hundreds of handcrafted props, inventions, collections, found objects, that create the impression of a mind that is constantly active, constantly building, constantly doing. The Grinch's intelligence is expressed through his environment. Makeup and practical effects, Rick Baker's legacy. Rick Baker and his team created something that should be considered one of the great achievements in prosthetic makeup artistry. The Grinch's facial makeup, which allows for full emotional expression while completely transforming Jim Carrey's face, is technically extraordinary. And the Whoville citizens' makeup, which takes normal human faces and pushes them just slightly into something fantastic, is equally impressive. The commitment to practical effects, actual physical sets, actual costumes, actual prosthetics, gives the film a texture and warmth that would be almost impossible to achieve with modern CGI. There's a weight to everything. A presence. You believe that Whoville exists because you can see the light bouncing off the actual surfaces. Music, James Horner's score and that song. Composer James Horner provides a score that is, frankly, better than most people remember. It's lush and orchestral, drawing on brass and strings to create that particular combination of grandeur and whimsy that the film requires. There's a main theme that is genuinely beautiful, melodic, memorable, with enough darkness at its edges to communicate the film's emotional complexity. But the standout musical moment, the one that has genuinely entered the cultural consciousness, is the You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, performed by Jim Carrey himself. Carrey sings this classic song in a version that is simultaneously deeply weird, deeply funny, and somehow, because of everything we now know about this character, deeply sad. He performs it with irony and self-awareness and a kind of bitter pride. It's extraordinary. Section 7, Critical Review and Comparisons. Alright. Here's where I get honest. The strengths. The film's greatest strengths are its central performance, its emotional ambition, and its visual achievement. Jim Carrey's Grinch is one of the great holiday movie performances, full stop. It belongs in a conversation with Alistair Sim's Scrooge, Bill Murray's Frank Cross in Scrooged, and Tom Hanks in Castaway. Wrong genre, I know, but hear me out. That level of physical and emotional commitment. The decision to give the Grinch a backstory was risky and is, I'd argue, largely successful. The flashback sequences add genuine emotional depth to a character that, in the original Seuss story, is more archetype than person. By making the Grinch a person, with a history and wounds and reasons, the film gives us something to hold on to that goes beyond the cartoon version. The production design and Rick Baker's makeup work are achievements that deserve to be celebrated as film history. This is a world that was built with real craft and real love, and it shows in every frame. Taylor Momsen's performance is criminally underappreciated. This child carries the film's moral weight with a grace and a stillness that most adult performers couldn't manage. And the film's critique of performative holiday culture is genuinely bold. It's the kind of thing that most studio family movies don't have the courage to include. The weaknesses. The film is also not without problems. Let's be real about that. The pacing in the second act is occasionally uneven. There are stretches, particularly around the Grinch's planning and scheming, where the film seems uncertain whether to push forward with the plot or explore the character more deeply. The result is sometimes a kind of narrative treading water. Some of the broad comedy, particularly some of the Whoville cities and jokes, lands as more wacky than genuinely funny. The film's sense of humor is at its best when it's specific and character-driven, and at its weakest when it's just general Seussian silliness. And there is a version of this film that treats the Grinch's psychological trauma with even more seriousness and depth, that really sits with what it means to have spent your entire life excluded and humiliated. The film gestures at this, and gestures meaningfully. But it does occasionally flinch from the full weight of it, presumably in service of keeping the tone appropriate for a family film. Comparisons. How does The Grinch stack up against comparable holiday films? Against A Christmas Carol adaptations, any version, it holds its own in terms of emotional complexity. The Grinch's transformation is, structurally, a Christmas Carol plot, isolated misanthrope forced to reckon with what Christmas really means, and the film's version of that arc is among the more interesting and specific I've seen. Against Elf, 2003, which came 3 years later and basically owns the Christmas comedy space for the 2000s, The Grinch is darker, stranger, and more emotionally ambitious. Elf is funnier and more consistently charming. Both are essential Christmas viewing. They occupy different parts of the holiday emotional spectrum. Against Home Alone, 1990, The Grinch is considerably more psychologically interesting. Home Alone is a brilliant piece of slapstick mechanics. The Grinch is something more. Against the 2018 animated The Grinch, starring Benedict Cumberbatch's voice, the 2000 live-action film wins by a considerable margin. The 2018 version is visually pleasing and technically accomplished, but it lacks the emotional depth, the creative risk, and the central performance that makes the 2000 film genuinely matter. The original 1966 animated special, narrated by Boris Karloff and featuring the iconic Chuck Jones designs, remains a perfect piece of art, efficient, iconic, emotionally pure. The 2000 film is a different thing, not better, not worse, but bigger in its ambition and more willing to risk failure in service of emotional complexity. For what it's trying to do, it largely succeeds. Section 8, Final Verdict and Legacy. 25 years. That's how long How the Grinch Stole Christmas has been with us now. And here's what I find genuinely remarkable: it has not faded. If anything, it has deepened. When this film came out in 2000, critics were mixed. Many praised the technical achievement and Jim Carrey's performance while questioning whether the emotional ambitions were fully realized. And those criticisms were not unfair. This is an imperfect film. It has pacing issues and tonal inconsistencies and a few beats that don't quite land. But here's what time has done for it: it has revealed the film's genuine emotional intelligence. The themes that seemed slightly heavy-handed in 2000, the critique of consumerism, the psychology of exclusion, the difference between performed celebration and genuine connection, have only become more relevant and resonant as the decades have passed. We live in an era of performative everything. Of curated holiday aesthetics and Christmas as a brand. The Grinch's question, "What are you actually celebrating, and why?" is more pointed now than it was in 2000. And Jim Carrey's performance, preserved in amber, perfect and strange, has only grown more appreciated as people have come to understand how much of himself he put into it, and how much suffering he endured in service of this green, furry, heartbroken creature. What this movie is really about. At its core, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, 2000, is about what we do with the people who don't fit. The people who are different, who make us uncomfortable, who exist on the edges of our communities. Do we exclude them? Mock them? Push them further away until they become the monsters we feared? Or do we send out one small child, one person who sees the humanity underneath the fur and the anger and the isolation, to say, "I see you. I'm glad you're here. Come in." The film argues, earnestly and with genuine feeling, for the latter. And it uses the scaffolding of a beloved children's story to make that argument in a way that reaches people who might not otherwise be receptive to it. That's not nothing. In fact, that's quite a lot. Who this film is for. This movie is for kids, obviously. They will love the comedy, the visual spectacle, Max the dog, and the snow. They will respond to Cindy Lou Who's bravery and the Grinch's eventual warmth. It's a fantastic film for children. But it is also for adults who have ever felt like outsiders. Who have ever sat at the edge of a celebration where everyone else seemed to know the words to a song they'd never been taught. Who have ever been told, by circumstance or cruelty or accident, that they don't belong. This movie is for the Grinches. For the people on the mountain, watching the lights below and feeling something complicated about it. It's for the people who have built walls because walls were the only protection available, and who maybe, just maybe, are ready to let someone in. And it's for the Cindy Lou Who's. For the people who choose to see humanity in places where it's been hidden. Who choose empathy over comfort. Who climb the cold mountain with no guarantee of a warm reception, because it's the right thing to do. That's a lot of people, actually. That might be all of us, at one point or another. Final rating. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, 2000, 8.5 out of 10. I know, some of you were expecting a 10, and some of you were expecting a 6. Let me explain. It's not a 10 because it has real structural issues. The second act drags in places. Some of the supporting comedy doesn't land as well as it should. And there are moments where the film doesn't fully commit to the emotional depths it has opened up. But it's absolutely not a 6, either. It is a film of genuine ambition, extraordinary craftsmanship, and a central performance that belongs in the canon of great holiday movie acting. It has real things to say about real human experiences, about exclusion, loneliness, the performative nature of holiday culture, and the transformative power of genuine empathy, and it says them with heart and style and humor. It is imperfect in the way that most genuinely ambitious things are imperfect. And I'll take that over polished mediocrity every single time. Closing thought. Here's the thing about the Grinch that I keep coming back to. He spent his whole life on the outside of Christmas, looking in. And when he finally destroys it, when he finally takes what he was always excluded from, it isn't satisfying. Because you can't take the thing you actually wanted. You can't steal belonging. You can't heist warmth. You can't rob community. The only way to get those things is to be offered them. And someone has to be brave enough to do the offering. Be the Cindy Lou Who this holiday season. Or really, Be the Cindy Lou Who any day. Any season. Any time you see someone on the mountain, cold and isolated and convinced that they don't deserve to come down, you might just change everything. Maybe Christmas, the Grinch thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. That's not just a Seuss rhyme. That's a pretty good philosophy for living. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.